Thank you. Have a seat.
Good morning.
All right. Let's see. Mr. Murphy, I believe you indicated you had no additional witnesses, but
Yes, Your
you
Honor.
have some exhibits you'd like to address?
Yes, we have submitted an updated exhibit list in this to take into account that the state has 26 marked witnesses in this particular case. We provided to defense counsel the updated exhibits that were discussed.
And are you offering all exhibits then?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Brigden, any objection to states exhibits 1 through 26?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. States exhibits 1 through 26 are admitted without objection. Mr. Murphy, does the state rest then?
Your Honor, before the state rests, there's two other issues
All right.
I'd like to address.
Sure.
One is that the parties had entered into stipulations. We had reduced on the writing. It's brought to the attention that the stipulations on the third series of events, the misdemeanor offenses, entail knowledge, which would extensively concede the reckless homicide and reckless assault. So the defense at this point is not agreeing to the element of knowledge, but will agree again on the date, the venue, the causation, and the number of those counts of the victims that are injured, and would be contesting whether or not his conduct was knowingly in those particular misdemeanor counts attached to the indictment. And additionally, I provided to defense counsel, we'd like it to have to be part of the record as part of the stipulation. We have listed for counts 1 through 6, the aggravated vehicular homicide counts, the name of the 6 fatalities and which count they apply to. And in counts 7 through 15, the names of the vehicular assaults that would be listed for each of the counts, as well as for the assault counts 16 through 26, the names of the victims for that as well, and I believe there's an agreement as to that. So the stipulations that the parties have entered into in this particular case would be for these individuals fitting the classification of the injuries situated and contained within the indictment. We have also entered into stipulations that for counts 1, 2, and 3, that the date of the event, the venue of the event, and the causation or responsibility of the event belongs to the defendant. And for counts 1 through 6 and counts 7 through 15, the issue will be whether or not the defendant, who is saying that his conduct was negligent, the state is saying that his conduct was reckless, as the mens rea. And for purposes of counts 16 to 26, I would imagine then that the issue would remain in the court would be whether or not he was knowingly caused or attempted to cause physical harm to these individuals, or lesser standard than knowingly. And I believe that fairly summarizes where we're at.
Mr. Brigden, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. For counts 1 through 6, which relate directly to the vehicular homicide, we stipulate the prosecution has provided us the names, what they are associated with each death on the indictment. We would stipulate to the defendant's operation of the motor vehicle as approximate cause of death in those counts. However, we are contesting the element of recklessness. The same with the vehicular assault in counts 7 through 15. The prosecution has provided the names those individuals are associated with as it relates to the indictment. And again, we would be contesting that the defendant behaved recklessly with regard to those counts. And counts 16 through 26, we would contest that the defendant did knowingly cause harm, the knowingly element of that as well. And I believe we also have a State's Exhibit 14 cell phone records as well, Your Honor.
All right. All right, then with those stipulations, Mr. Murphy, does the state rest?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, state rests, Mr. Brigden, any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would call Sebastian Van Newton.
You solemnly swear testimony about the this case, now the earnest truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Yeah, see? Can you state your full name, spell your last name, please, for records?
Sebastian Van Newton. Van Newton is spelled V-A-N space N-O-O-T-E-N.
Thanks.
You may inquire.
Mr. Van Newton, can you please state your occupation, please?
I am an engineer, and I do collision reconstruction and product failure analysis
Okay. And who do you work for?
consulting. So I typically work for law firms or insurance companies,
Okay.
and I work for a company called Ambassador Forensic Engineer, and I'm the principal, I'm the owner of the company.
Okay. And can you describe your duties involving crash analysis and forensic engineering?
Sure. So typically, in a case I get retained, I'm asked to investigate the collision site. I'm asked to inspect the vehicles, download information, review whatever other information is available to me, video, whatever there is, and then arrive at opinions by after I've done my analysis.
Okay. Can you summarize your education and related experience?
Certainly. So I went to the University of Western Ontario and I received a degree in mechanical engineering. After I spent 7 years designing heavy trucks for International Truck and Engine Corporation, I started working for a consulting firm doing a line of work that I'm in right now. I started that in about 2000, so I've been doing collision reconstruction for about 23 years.
Okay. Probably a difficult question. Can you estimate how many total crash reconstructions or investigations you've conducted over 20-some years?
Yeah, I think my CV says, what, 2,700 or something like that.
Okay.
But it's probably over 3,000 by now.
Okay. Okay. And have you testified as an expert before?
Yes, I have.
On multiple occasions?
Yes.
Over multiple years?
Yes.
Okay. So you were retained in this case to analyze the data associated with the accident that occurred on November 14th?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Now, in the beginning of that, I think the day of the accident, you actually were at the scene. Is that accurate?
No, that's
Drove
not.
to it?
Not. I was called on the day of the accident, late in the day, and but I attended the scene 2 days afterwards.
Okay, so you physically were at the scene?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And what different data or reports did you review when you were coming up with your opinion?
So in addition to inspecting all the vehicles and reviewing the information that, or the photographs and the information I collected from the vehicles, I've also reviewed the report prepared by Sergeant Jasper. I have reviewed the data from the Garmin and the coach bus. I've reviewed the airbag control module data from the Nissan and the Toyota. And I've reviewed some videos as well from this case.
Okay. Did you formulate an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty about the speed of Jacob McDonald the moments leading up to the collision?
I did arrive at an opinion in regards to that, yes. I established that it can be said with absolute certainty what the precise speed of Mr. McDonald's speed was the moments leading up to it. However, in the 30 minutes prior to the collision, the ELD data, or the data from his electronic logging device, indicates that he had been traveling on an average over those 30 minutes between 70 and 71 miles per hour.
Okay. I'd like to take a moment just to look at that ELD data if we could.
Certainly.
Is this the ELD data that you reviewed?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And this data demonstrates some fluctuations in speed over the course of travel. Is that what you were describing?
Yes.
Okay. And we have a low point of 62 miles an hour, roughly 62.8.
Correct.
Okay. And a high point, I believe, several minutes before at 8:25 a.m., well, many minutes before at 75.2.
Correct.
Okay. Now, are you aware of whether or not this vehicle had a cruise control system?
Yes, it had a cruise control system.
Okay. Are you aware of what the limitations of that cruise control system was?
I'm not too sure what you mean by limitations, but if you're specifically asking about the governed speed on cruise, I understand it to be 72 miles an hour.
Okay. Now, did you do any analysis related to the topography of the travel, of that course of travel?
I did.
Okay, can you describe that, please?
Right, so there's a couple of things I did. I've done three different things. The first thing I did was I used Google Earth, which has a feature that if you basically route a path between 2 points, you can view the elevation changes over that path.
Sorry to stop you
Yeah.
there. Is that what we're looking at right here in this figure?
That's correct, that's
Okay.
correct. And when you're looking at this elevation changes, and you're looking at this, what you've got on the screen here in front of us, is that you see the blue line represents the path taken by Mr. McDonald from where he left in Zanesville to the area of the collision. And then on the bottom, you're seeing something a little bit maybe distorted because the vertical scale is exaggerated compared to the horizontal scale. So that means basically it's overemphasizing, so you can get a good appreciation for the elevation changes. The elevation goes from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. So the changes go from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, even though Mr. McDonald was traveling from the right side of the screen to the left side of the screen, if that makes sense to you.
Clarify, this is page 11 of your report, correct?
I believe so. Let me,
Whatever, sir. Sir, I paged up for you.
yes, page 11, thank you.
And this is a true and accurate depiction of that Google Earth query that you did?
Correct,
Okay. So the blue line then that you're referring to is up here, right?
correct.
Okay. And that's the course of travel?
Along I-70, yes.
Okay. And I believe that you said it goes from the right, so this, where my cursor is now, would be Zanesville?
Correct,
Okay. And so the impact would be over here?
correct.
Okay. And this is demonstrating that there's hills and inclines and declines?
Correct.
Okay. And when we compare that back to the ELD data that we were looking at, knowing that there's inclines and declines associated with that travel, would you expect to see the speed increase and decrease?
Yes, yes.
And you're aware that the semi, with its load, the Freightliner that Mr. McDonald was driving is approximately 46,000 pounds?
Yes, I understand that.
Okay. And would you expect, now, when we're looking at this data, we have a 71 mile an hour speed right here, for example, at 8:32 a.m. And at 8:33, shortly thereafter, we have a 62 mile an hour, nearly a 10 mile an hour delta. Would you expect a semi to lose that much speed going up a hill?
Some of the inclines along that path, I wouldn't be surprised, but there could be other reasons too for the slowing beyond the grade. So we can't say with certainty what it is, but certainly some of the grades that I've traveled along the I-70 are, you know, a tractor trailer could lose a significant amount of its speed depending where it's at.
Now, if you assumed that the cruise control was set at 72, I'm looking at the speeds that are above 72, and there appear to be about 5 of them, maybe 6. But each one is only about a 3 to 3.7 mile an hour delta. Would you agree with that? Maximum of 3.7, excuse me.
Yes,
Okay. And would that be consistent with running on cruise control and then going down and a decline?
yes, it would be.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier the EDR, that you had reviewed that as well. The EDR device for the Nissan?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And EDR is, can you describe, what's that acronym?
Event data recorder.
Event, okay, event data, all right. And the Nissan EDR is interesting because it has 2 trigger events, correct?
Correct.
Can you tell me, just walk me through your analysis of the EDR related to the Nissan and the 2 trigger events?
Okay, so the first recorded event is the impact from the rear end impact.
Let me stop you real quick. Is it, what we're looking at right now, and this would be Defense Exhibit D, is this the first recorded event that you'll be referring to?
Correct.
Is this a true and accurate depiction of that data that was from the EDR?
That is,
Okay.
yes.
Go ahead.
What page are you?
That would be page,
It-
page 416.
As part of his report?
No, it's not part of my report. It's
Oh,
a
okay.
separate one.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're on page 416, and this is the Nissan's EDR data, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and we're looking at event record 1. Can you go ahead?
Correct.
Okay.
So this is the first event, and we can tell it's the first event because it says a number of events is 1, even though we know there's 2, because at the time that this is recorded, this is its first event. And so when we go to event record 2, we'll see that there's 2 events. And so at this point right now, we can see 5 lines down that it says multi-event number of events, and it says 1. So that tells me I'm on my first event. And then the next thing I look at is
Can
that,
I stop real quick?
Yeah.
Is event 1, what, in relation to the sequence of events, what is that related
this is the
to?
first event, this is the impact to the rear end from Mr. McDonald's Freightliner into the back end of the Nissan Murano.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? And we can see in here, one of the key points that you've got highlighted here is the delta V. And the delta V represents the changing velocity of the vehicle it experiences during the crash. And in this case, it's 57 miles an hour, which is very, very significant. That's a very significant crash. It's 57 mile an hour delta V. And so that's a large number, and we're looking at that, and we notice that it's positive, which means, by the fact that the value is 57 is positive, tells me it's being accelerated forward. So that's one of the things I'm looking at right there. And so one of the things that I'm also looking at is the time to the maximum delta V is 92 milliseconds, so it's not even a tenth of a second. It goes from, it's accelerated ahead by 57 miles an hour.
And would that 92 that you're talking about be this point right here?
Correct.
Okay. Can you tell me, so these EDRs that are recording these events, what are they typically calibrated at from the manufacturer?
So, I mean, calibrated, I don't, and again, because that's proprietary information to the manufacturer, and I'm not privileged to that information. But basically, if you think of a traditional crash, an intersection crash between two passenger vehicles, or more of a typical highway rear-end crash, they don't involve the severity or the horrific severity of this particular crash. So it would be, they're typically, when if you look at the studies on when they're calibrating, not so much calibrating, but testing these event data recorders, the 35 mile an hour delta V crashes, they're not 757. So this is outside what I would say the normal kind of testing parameters that an EDR would go under.
Okay. So we also have another event too that occurs. Well, let's
Yeah,
talk about
let's
this
first,
chart first, I guess. So this is the delta V in event record 1.
Correct.
Can you describe what's going on here?
Just
we're
what page are
looking
you
at?
on?
We are now on page 6 of 16.
All right.
Okay, so this is a chart and a graph showing the increase in the change of velocity, that delta V that we're talking about. So you can see it happens over time. So that basically you can see that it's reporting that it reaches that 57, that flat line at the top up there, somewhere near 130 milliseconds.
Okay.
So if you scroll down again where it says, keep scrolling down to where we were talking before, we saw that 92 on the page.
Right? Right there?
Yeah. And
That
it
was
says,
on page
yeah,
4
right,
of 16.
yeah, can you just stop it there?
Yes.
And we see that it says, no, excuse me, I was talking about the time to the maximum longitudinal delta V. I'm sorry if I mixed something. I should have been looking at the line 165. So you see where it says time to maximum longitudinal? I should have had you highlight that one, not the 92.
Right here.
Yeah, sorry
Okay.
about that. Let's go back up to the graph.
Let me just disclaim, I don't know where this green
I just
has
did that
come from,
accidentally. I
but
didn't.
I'm not putting that on there.
You can clear it out.
I don't know how to.
Tap the screen.
I touched the screen.
Oh, clearly.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we're going back up to here.
Yeah. And so you can see,
We're back on page 6 of 16.
yeah, and so you can see that on the bottom part of it is also in a chart format. So those are the numbers, and the top part's the graph. And you can see that the delta V is climbing for, it's 130 milliseconds, it's almost leveled off, but the true number where they're saying the maximum happened at 165, but it's really right around 130 and 140. You're seeing that it's pretty
So-
much near its maximum.
Just for clarification, the millisecond is,
A thousandth of a second.
okay. So when we get to 130, that is,
Basically, 100 milliseconds is a tenth of a second.
okay,
So it's just a blink of an eye,
okay,
basically, we're looking at.
okay. So we're saying in a tenth of a second, the vehicle accelerates up to 57 mile an hour delta.
Well, it's
Roughly,
just
a little bit more.
just more than a tenth of a second, so 130 milliseconds, 140 milliseconds.
Okay,
So we're getting up there.
so we also have a second event that occurs, correct?
Correct, correct. And I think it's down the other way. Oh, no, there it is.
The way the
Sorry, yeah,
scan
no,
did, I
yeah.
have to go.
Okay,
So this is on page 8 of 16 of the EDR report, correct?
right.
Okay.
And so we know this is a second event, it's labeled that way, but also if you go down about 5 lines down, it says multi-event number of events, 2. So we know we have 2 events, and it says the time from the first event to the second event is 0.1 seconds.
And that's over here, right?
Right, and 0.1 seconds is 100 milliseconds,
Okay.
okay? And so, and that's recorded. So basically what it's telling us, this data is telling us, is that, let me continue on a bit further. In this one, it tells us that the maximum longitudinal delta V, if we go down a bit back more where you've highlighted, it says minus 37. The negative number tells me that the car is slowing down by 37 miles an hour in that crash. So the first crash, it was accelerated, the second crash, it's slowing down. So that's telling me that the second crash is when the Nissan is impacting the back of the bus.
Okay.
All right, so it's slowing down now got accelerated up to 57 miles an hour, now it's slowing down by 37 miles an hour. And it does that in 297 milliseconds. You can see
That's
the
this
next
number
line.
right here, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And so, when I looked at that information, I found that a bit odd. Because if we go back to our graph, I'm still got the other one at 100 milliseconds, which is 1/10 of a second.
Which is right here.
I'm still experiencing the first crash. And so, basically it appears to me, based on what this data is showing me, that the 2 crashes are overlapping on each other. This is the way the data is being presented in this report. So that's when I turn to looking at the physical evidence, what does that tell me on the ground? And if you look at the photographs taken at the collision scene, and you look at Sergeant Jasper's report, he's showing about 40 feet from where the evidence starts from the impact of the Nissan being rear-ended by the Freightliner to where its front end impacts the back end of the coach bus.
Okay, let me stop you there. This is page 16 of Sergeant Jasper's report, figure 18. And is that what you're describing, the physical evidence of where the impact occurred?
Right, so on the top photograph on this page is the evidence of the initial impact between the Freightliner and the back end of the Nissan.
Okay.
And then, if you, basically, you can see the second impact further on. If you scroll down a bit, so we're seeing the full picture here. Yeah, that's a bit better there. You can see that the impact with the coach bus is up at that streak where the fluid stains are, and that distance is approximately 40 feet.
Okay.
And so, and we can tell that just simply looking at the lane line dashes on it.
Okay.
So,
we have, the first recorded event is the semi impacting the Murano, correct?
correct.
Okay. Then we have the second event is the Murano impacting the bus, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So describe the difference in the milliseconds as associated with the physical evidence and what your conclusion was there.
Right. So we're looking at, basically, the Nissan Murano is about 16 feet in length. So if we have 40 feet from the back end of the Murano to the back end of the bus, 16 of that's taken up by the length of the Murano, so you ended up with about 24 feet. At let's say 70 miles an hour is roughly, 72 miles an hour is roughly about 105 feet a second. So in 1/10 of a second, we travel about 10.5 feet, or about 11 feet. So in 1/10 of a second, if it's only got 11 feet forward, we shouldn't be at the coach bus yet.
Okay.
So we've got a bit of an issue here. When I'm looking at the data, there's something that's not quite right.
Okay. So the EDR data at .10, the 100 milliseconds, the second trigger event, it's not matching up to the physical evidence, which we know is 40 feet, correct?
Correct, and there's about 24 feet separation between them, right? So if a tenth of a second should have moved 11 feet, not 24 feet.
Okay. So we have a second triggered event before when we would expect when looking at the physical act.
Right, right.
But
And
that's
if,
not,
yeah, sorry.
that's not our only issue either, is it?
Correct, correct.
It
So-
would be the differences in the negative number is associated in event 2 and the positive number in event 1, correct?
Correct. So if we go to the delta V longitudinal graph that you've got for event record 2,
Okay.
so
And that would be page 10 of 16 in the EDR report for the Nissan,
correct.
okay?
And so when we're looking here, this event is triggered, and we're seeing the basically it's being triggered a tenth of a second afterwards. We have a delta V that's that's a negative delta V being recorded at the same time you're having a positive delta V. So the 0 point on this graph that we're looking at is that should be close to the 100 millisecond point on the other graph we're talking about. So from a perspective of looking at it, it's almost like you've got conflicting information. One part of it's recording it positive, one part's reporting it negative. So as we're looking at the whole thing, it's not what we would expect. We would expect a longer time between the two events, closer to 2 milliseconds. 0.2 seconds, or 200 milliseconds, and not 0.1. And when we see the Nissan Murano strike the back end of the bus, we would expect a graph that would drop sharply, and not what we're seeing here. So if you can imagine, if the front end of the bus, front end of the Nissan is impacting the bus, I'd expect it to slow down quicker than what we're seeing here.
Okay. And so we have conflicting data in the EDR of the Nissan,
Right.
correct?
And if I can go and make a third point.
Sure.
So if we assume that the Nissan Murano was accelerated to 72 miles an hour during the collision by the events, of when it's impacted by the Freightliner. The delta V, the longitudinal delta V, if you scroll down, well, it shows on the other graph. It's not on this one, but go up to where the chart is. It shows a 37 miles an hour for event record 2.
Oh, event record 2, I'm sorry.
Yeah. A little, I think it's a little higher where you had where is it? With basically it gives you the delta V just in a single number. Go down a bit, sorry.
Okay, in the actual chart.
There it is, here it is, yes, 37. So here we have a 37 mile an hour negative delta V. It's at 72, and it slows down by 37. Then your final speed would be 35 miles an hour. Just, 72 minus 37 is 35. And if we look at the data about what the bus was accelerated to from the impact, it's closer to 40 to 42, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the Toyota event data recorder and we talk about the Garmin data. So there's a disconnect through there when we're looking at the speed of we'd expect this negative 37 to be is almost over-reported, or the minus 57 is too great. There's a problem because we're not getting the numbers that we would expect.
So visually, we have a delta V of 57 going up and a negative 37 going down.
Correct.
And there's how do you explain this contradiction? Is there anything with regards to the airbag control module or the EDR device itself, given this accident, that would explain that?
Right, so because this is a horrific accident, and when we look at what happened to this Nissan Murano and how it was twisted up, that's outside the normal operating parameters of what we would expect an airbag control module to experience in a typical crash. So the airbag control module may not be facing level parallel to the ground at all times. We don't really know how it got twisted around during the whole course of the collision. And that would affect, because it's accelerometers inside there, and those accelerometers are expected to be, level or flat with the ground during the time that they're recording.
Let me just stop you real quick. What is an accelerometer?
So, sorry, an accelerometer is a device, a sensor that measures the amount of acceleration that a vehicle or an object will undergo.
So is that what the delta V's, is that, they're coming from that thing?
Correct.
Accelerometer?
The delta V's are, the delta V is calculated from an accelerometer that's inside that vent data recorder.
Are there different types of accelerometer?
Yes, there's tons and tons of different accelerometers out there you can purchase. And they all have different applications and for different reasons. And so you typically have, I'm not an expert in accelerometers, but from the accelerometers I've used during testing, you basically pick an accelerometer for the expected range of accelerations that you're going to anticipate experiencing.
Okay.
Right? And so this was some pretty horrific accelerations that it experienced and some very high delta V's. So I would suggest that there may be an issue here with the accelerometer not being level, which would have caused a problem, or perhaps some of the forces were outside its normal expected range. And I don't know, because I don't know the specifications for the accelerometer that's in that vehicle, nor do I know how that event data recorder was twisted around. But I recognize that there's some potential issues that I'm dealing with here.
This accident's been described that basically the top half of the car was peeled off, and it was described as rolled up as a burrito. Could that be an explanation as to why we have these contradictive numbers in it?
With the delta V's, yes.
With the
And as
delta
far as the delta V numbers, yes. That could help explain some of it.
And was the analysis of the event record 2 in Sergeant Jasper's report?
No, I don't recall it being discussed in Sergeant Jasper's report.
Okay. Well, you touched on the coach bus there a moment ago, and I guess I would go into that. Did you also analyze the data from the coach bus?
As far as the data came, there was two pieces of data that came from the coach bus. There was an event data recorder on the coach bus, which is because it was equipped with a Detroit diesel engine, and a Detroit diesel engine has an event data recorder on it, and I'm very familiar with that event data recorder. However, that event data recorder did not capture any of the events of this collision, and I reviewed it and quickly realized that. And the second piece of data that we have from the coach bus would be the Garmin GPS device, which I also reviewed, and the data from that.
Okay. And I believe you included that in your report, correct?
Correct.
Well, that's Jasper. And that in your report, I believe, begins on page.
It's right at the very end.
Right there.
That's where it starts on page
So it's
26.
one, okay. And what did you determine from, well, how did you go about getting this data?
Well, I'm very familiar that Garmin devices can be useful in collision reconstruction. And so we often come across them in vehicles. And in the years that I've been doing it, I've reviewed and studied, in fact, participated in studies of the Garmin data and its usefulness in collision reconstruction and its limitations, right? So when you have a Garmin GPS device, you can plug it into your computer and look at it just like it's a USB device, like a little thumb drive. And you'll see various files within that device. And there's one particular file we go after. And we take that file and we typically would then use some software that's provided by Garmin, that's published, that's available free from their website. You can download it, and you are able to take that file and open it with the software, and you can read the data that's been collected from that device if it was powered up during the time that the last events of when it was being used.
And did you do that?
And I didn't have access to the Garmin, but I was provided with the GPX file, which I opened up in the Garmin software, and this is a printout from that.
Okay, that's what we're looking at right now.
That's correct.
Page 26 of your report.
Correct. And the Garmin software also shows the elevation changes. And so this was another point that I used to kind of look at the elevation changes that the bus underwent, which would have been identical to the elevation changes that Mr. McDonald's tractor trailer would have undergone. And so this green graph you see in front of you here is the elevation changes that the bus underwent along its time. But obviously it was traveling longer, 115 miles than the distance that Mr. McDonald traveled.
Okay. And in your analysis of the Garmin data, I believe if we go back, I've highlighted it on here so I know where to stop. So that would be page 50 of your report and page 25 of the Garmin report, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I've got some highlighted portions on this. Can you describe the significance of what these are?
Correct. So if we're looking at line 544 on the graph in front of me, we can see that it's showing the first number after the 544 is the elevation above sea level that it's reporting. The second number is what we refer to as the leg distance. And that 60 feet that we're seeing on 544 is the distance traveled between line 544 and line 545. And the time difference between line 544 and 545 is 1 second. And so if you travel 60 feet in 1 second, you're going 41 miles an hour, which is what the 41's reported. So you can see that if you go further, the next line over, the next number over is 273.1, and that is the heading or the direction. So 270 degrees from 0 degrees would be west. So that basically it's traveling basically west at 273 degrees from true north. The next point in time, the next line is, or item is the date and time. So we see that the 11th of November, 14th of November at 8:47:42 was when the bus accelerated to 41 miles an hour. And we've got the location, the precise latitude and longitude in the final column.
What does that tell us?
So that basically tells us, gives us a precise point. So I can copy that point, north 39 degrees, 56.87 minutes, 897 minutes, and west 82 degrees, 40.237 minutes. I can copy and paste that and put that into Google Maps or into any map program, and it will show me on a map where that point is precisely. And I can then take the next line down at 545, take the same latitude and longitude. I can copy and paste that in, and I can measure the distance between that, and it should be 60 feet. Okay? And so if we look at the line 543, which was above it, it's showing that the leg distance, the leg time, is 9 seconds long. So the time, and there's 246 feet. So if we look at 246 divided by 9, we're going to get the speed in feet per second, and then we can convert it, and we'll end up being 19 miles an hour.
And what is that 19 miles an hour?
That's the average speed over the previous 9 seconds
Okay. And is
of the coach bus.
of the coach bus.
Yes.
And in relation to the sequence of events, when is that 19 miles an hour?
The 9 seconds leading up to the collision.
The 9 seconds leading up to the collision. Okay.
Correct.
So, do we have a precise speed of the bus at the time of collision?
No.
Okay. And why is that?
Because we don't have, we just have a speed, we have a 0.9 seconds prior to the acceleration to 41 miles an hour.
Now, the bus, once it's been impacted by the Murano and the Freightliner, then it impacts the Toyota Highlander. Are you in agreement with that?
I am.
Okay, did you review the Toyota Highlander data?
I did.
Okay. And were you able to determine any speed of the Highlander?
I was.
And what was that?
If I recall correctly, just before impact, it was traveling around just under 9 miles an hour, 8.7 or 8.8 miles per hour.
Okay. So it's going slower than the bus?
Well, we don't have the precise speed of the bus, but it, based on the averages, yes.
Okay. What role, in your review of this reconstruction of this crash, what role did the Highlander's positioning and movement play in the chain of events in the collision?
Well, there's a couple different things when I'm analyzing it. And if you go to I don't know if you have the EDR data from the Toyota op, but there's just one thing I'd like to point out there. I'll go through a couple different things that I was looking at.
No, I do not. I know that's not it. No,
Okay.
I do not have that.
Okay.
unless it's in your
Well,
review.
I can let you know. I mean, I have my own copy here of the data, and we can look at the same information and note, just as we were discussing with the Nissan Murano, we can talk about the Delta V. So the last reported speed of the Toyota was 8.7 miles per hour, and it was accelerated forward by the crash when it was impacted from behind by the coach bus. It was accelerated forward by 32.1 miles per hour. So if you add those two numbers together, you get pretty close to 41 miles an hour, which is what we're seeing here, right?
Earlier, you made a correlation between that and the Nissan that I think that you wanted to go back to. Is that
Right, correct. So if you recall, the 72 miles an hour minus the 37, I said was 35. So if a Nissan basically slowed down to 35 miles an hour during the second part of the crash, doesn't match up with the 41 miles an hour that we see in the coach buses EDR or in the Toyota Z.
So it's further evidence that something with the Nissan PDR is not correct.
It's not responding or acting like we would expect it to based upon the other pieces of information we have.
Okay.
Okay? And it's specifically only with the delta V and not the reported speeds of pre-crash speeds, but just looking at the delta V numbers. You also were asking me about the position of the Toyota in relation to my analysis, and when I inspected the Toyota, and as it's pointed out in Sergeant Jasper's report, the impact was to the right side of the Toyota. So there was an offset. So the coach bus was to the right of the Toyota, which would have caused it to spin out when it was impacted.
And did you review where in the bus's position, where on the impact portion of the bus was in relation to the Toyota?
So the left front corner of the bus would have impacted the rear side of the rear right side.
Would that be consistent with steering right?
It could be, yes, yes.
Now, you've reviewed the video, the Freightliner video from behind the accident, correct?
Correct,
Okay. And that would be this video here?
correct.
Okay. And we've discussed, I know you weren't here, but quite at length, the frames at which we were determining impact or making the best judgment possible that we can as far as impact. Have you made a determination of that as well?
Correct. I used a different software program, but I looked through it, and basically 31, at time point 31, it's actually 31.1 is what I ended up, and you can see a kind of a change in the attitude of the Mr. McDonald's trailer, and there's some flashes of color at about that time, which would indicate to me that an impact was occurring.
Okay, so if we agreed that the impact is, earlier they were shown in frames which are a second, correct? A frame is a second, is that accurate?
No.
Oh,
So, this video is recorded at 30 frames a second, so there's be 30 frames, 30 pictures in 1 second.
okay, 30
All right.
pictures in 1 second.
And so, basically, when you're going through it, you can go through it frame by frame, and you can and slowly look for the slight changes and zoom into the picture and see, and you can scroll through it that way and kind of basically look at the video frame by frame.
Did you notice when you were doing this white van?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and did you consider it at all in any of your analysis?
Yes, I mean, it's discussed in Sergeant Jasper's report, and in the sense that there's a statement from him where that he's traveling along, he had been in front, and you can see from the video, it was in front of the Freightliner, in front of Mr. McDonald, and then it moves into the left lane.
Which is what we're seeing right now, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And then you see it, the impact happens, and then you see it dive to the left.
Now, we're on one second pass, but from 33, we see a change in the Freightliner. And would you agree, well, can you describe the behavior, of the van up to this point?
Well, it seems to be traveling with the Freightliner or right in the area of the Freightliner.
Okay. And then, did you do an estimation of how long after the impact to the van veering to the left?
Yes, I did.
And what is that?
It was about 1.5 seconds
Okay.
in that neighborhood, and you might have 3 people review it and come up with slightly different. One might say, 1.6, one guy might say 1.4, but it's in the general 1.5 time frame.
And the statement, you read Eugene Mann's statement, he's the driver of the white van, and then Sergeant Jasper's report.
Correct.
And his explanation for veering left was to avoid which he described as a burgundy Highlander. Is that consistent with him veering as a reconstruction expert, is what he would be doing at that point in time?
Well, if he sees an object in the lane in front of him, he's gonna have to perceive and respond to that object and then take evasive actions. So yes, you'd expect him, if the vehicle pops in front of you from the side, you'd expect him to respond to that.
Okay. So we have the impact then of Jacob McDonald impacting that Murano. What is perception response time?
So perception response time is we as human beings need some time to take into the information in the environment in front of us. And we'll use the example as a driver because that's what we're dealing with here. So as your driver, you're driving along, there's something that's going to happen in front of you. You have to basically, first of all, detect whatever's happening in front of you. You have to identify it and understand it, and then you have to make a decision to what you're going to do, and then you have to execute that decision. So that's kind of the 4 steps that we often refer to that are included in the perception response time. And obviously, we as humans, we're all different. Our perception response times will be all different to the same situation, but there usually can be found that, for a given situation, that people's perception response times will occur or typically fall within a certain amount of time. So just because, something, for example, if you use the example of something moving into the road in front of a coming up from beside a parked vehicle into the path of the driver, a ball or a car, a ball or a cab or something like that. The driver has to detect what it is, understand what they're looking at, and make that decision. That can, might be take a person a second or a second and a half to that's typical ranges of what a perception response time will be for a person to identify before that they're actually maybe braking or steering in response to that.
Okay. Is it plausible to you, through all of your experience in accident reconstruction, that Jacob McDonald took his eyes off the road prior to the impact of the Murano?
That's a reasonable conclusion that leading up to the impact within Murano, he was obviously not, for a good part of the time that he's approaching that Nissan Murano, he's not making an observation. We can't say that he, if in the last second, he didn't observe it, but didn't have time to execute a response and a meaningful response by steering or braking. But you can't say that in theory he didn't see it. He either didn't see it or he didn't see it in enough time to affect any braking or steering that would have changed his speed or changed his. So he could have detected it in that perception response time. So that there is in theory that he could have never seen it, or he could have seen it and but not had time to proceed to complete his perception response.
What role, if any, could the white van have played in him taking his eyes off the road?
Again, that would be, for me, I would be kind of speculating as to kind of, but if the white van's traveling along and he's looking at the white van, and that's where his attention is, instead of the Nissan Murano, that might explain why he didn't see the Nissan Murano because he's looking at the white van.
I'm not asking you to speculate. I'm asking we're just discussing someone taking their eyes off the road. Through your experience in reconstructing all of these accidents, is that something that individuals in their everyday course of driving may do? May they look over at a vehicle next to them?
Correct. I mean, I think we've all been drivers, or everyone who's been a driver has, looked at a sign on the road, looked out their window, looked at another vehicle as they're driving along the highway. So it's something that people do.
Okay. So, based on all the evidence that you reviewed, and including the ELD data, the dash cam footage, the vehicle inspections, the elevation data. What's your ultimate opinion on Mr. McDonald's speed through the course of his travel before impact?
So right before impact, we don't have a good hard data point to necessarily rely on and determine his speed. We do know that he's traveling along the highway averaging between 70 and 71 miles per hour. And if we accept that his truck is governed at 72, there's no reason to believe that he couldn't have been up at 72 miles an hour. But the stretch of highway that he's on leading up to the collision is virtually flat. On the 600 feet that we measured, we surveyed the highway of the 600 feet of stretch of highway. There was a 2-foot elevation change over that a 600-foot stretch uphill. So basically, he was traveling ever so slightly, but effectively flat in that area. So elevation changes wouldn't affect his speed if he'd been traveling at 72. If he had taken his foot off, turned off the cruise or done something, it could have changed his speed, but we don't have any data points other than the 57-mile-an-hour delta V experienced by the Nissan to kind of come up with a 72 miles an hour. And again, I pointed out to you why I have concerns with the delta V data from the Nissan.
So, if you were looking back at the ELD data, that's 74.7 mile an hour at the top at 8:46 a.m., which is approximately 1.8 miles or 2 minutes before impact. Does that tell us his speed at impact?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. It's entirely plausible that his speed had decreased. Would you opine to that?
From 74.7, yes.
Okay. So, given the totality of everything that you've looked at related to Jacob McDonald's speed and driving behavior prior to impact, based on your experience and education, would you say with a reasonable degree of certainty that Mr. McDonald was not behaving recklessly?
Based on reviewing the speed data, I can't see that there's anything to suggest other than he didn't reduce his speed and avoid a crash, but there's nothing that I see that he's doing in the data that I'm looking at that suggests that he's driving recklessly.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Why don't we take a recess, come back to cross-examination?
All rise. No recess.
Oh, no, I.
Yeah.
Hey, Richie, could you ask Elaine to come here? No, you did. Yes, Dan.
Oh, yes.
I need you to go back.
That's what Sherry was saying. Why don't you do work 410? So I was like, this would be awesome having a Wednesday off.
I think that things would have something today.
Right. I proposed 8 years.
Well, we're trying to figure out what it is, and we're looking at some calculations, Excel.
I mean, granted, in a perfect world, I'd love to have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but I'm okay with like taking Wednesday, having a Wednesday off. And, right. I was like, I can't be still.
Yes, that's the biggest thing. Right.
Yes, that would be probably you that are supposed to do that.
That is number one thing for me. Anything isn't it?
Yeah, because Saturday's pretty much kind of running around in the air, just getting it done.
I proposed it years ago to, because we had, you know, we still did, we have so many photographers that have been there for, and, you know, somebody like Dan Hammond can't get off the weekend, so well, yeah, again, it's still, but there, it was even worse, and I was like, proposed, well,
Cole's never.
right. I proposed, well, there's some, but, I proposed that if you work a weekend, you only had to work one day, and you need to be able to 4-day work. To entice people to work the weekend, you know.
It's gonna be a number of documents.
Right.
Otherwise, they just do 4 days.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Brennan was doing that.
What's that?
I think Brennan was doing that.
Yeah, some,
Or like the weekend review.
yeah.
Yeah.
Go into the grocery store, and then again, somebody stops me at the store.
Yeah.
You know what, this one, yeah, when the grocery store, trying to go to the store, and see where it's I don't get chicken and vegetables, I got tacos. Just see me at the checkout line. Like, I've been to this group, oh, I don't know, I'm like, I don't have anything. Oh, there you go. This is that one too.
Mine is just.
I did follow your lead now.
Yes.
The last one. I thought that was, I don't really know.
Have a seat. Mr. Murphy, cross-examination.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So you indicated on your direct testimony that you were out at the scene. I think your report indicates on page 2 that it was actually on November 16th, 2023. You had said 2 days later, so, okay. And before we go any further, I just want to ask you, Defendant's Exhibit F in this particular case is your report. This document here,
Okay.
is it?
Yes, that's my report.
Okay, is it accurate and complete?
Yes,
Is there any errors or omissions in this report that you're aware of?
not that I can think of right now.
Okay. And you had a chance to review this report, I'm assuming, when you wrote it and provided it to council?
Yes,
Okay, and it looks like you had sent this, looks like via email on January 27th, 2025.
yes.
Okay. Do you recall, sir, when you were engaged, or what you were engaged to do when you were out on November 16th, 2023 at the collision site?
I was asked to document the collision site.
By who?
I was retained by a counsel for the defense of Mr. McDonald's or Mid-State Systems.
So the trucking company?
Correct.
Okay, so the trucking company hired you to go out to the scene?
But it's, yes,
Okay.
through its attorneys.
And sir, did you provide them with the exact same report that you provided counsel for Mr. McDonald here today?
No,
There's a different report that you provided.
I basically haven't provided them a report. I only provided what I refer to as a record of evidence,
Okay?
which is simply the photographs that I took and the drawings that are included in this report. So that's the only thing they got from me.
Okay, so you didn't provide them any conclusions on your investigations?
That's no written conclusions whatsoever.
Okay, but you discussed conclusions with them, I'm assuming.
We discussed what evidence I had seen.
Okay. And in terms of looking at page, I guess this would be page 1 of your report, if you have your report in front of you, sir.
Certainly.
And I'm looking at the first page of that, looks like a letter dated January 27, 2025, Mr. Brigden?
Yes.
Okay. And you conducted an investigation analysis of the above noted collision for his request and reviewed Ohio State Highway Patrol investigatory material and reviewed Sergeant Trevor Jasper's report, I'm assuming, from OSHB.
Correct.
Okay. And in background information, in the last sentence, you have there that there were 5 fatalities and numerous injuries. Is that accurate?
No, I believe there's 6.
Okay. So your report's wrong on the first page. Correct?
That's correct, yes. There's 6, that's a obviously mistake there.
Pretty glaring one.
Yes.
Okay. And you described this on, I believe, page 1 also as a chain reaction collision. What do you define as a chain reaction collision?
One vehicle pushes into another, which pushes into another, which pushes into another. So there's kind of a chain.
Okay. And sir, do you have any opinion as to whether those other vehicles at the time that these events commenced with the Freightliner hitting the Nissan Murano, whether those other vehicles were in motion or were they stationary? Do you have an opinion as to whether those other vehicles were in motion at the time of initial impact?
The Nissan Murano,
All the other vehicles, yes, the Nissan,
the
Toyota, the
bus,
Van Hool,
yes.
were they all in motion?
They're all in motion.
Okay, so if someone was to have previously suggested that the traffic wasn't moving, would you disagree with that?
I would disagree with that.
Okay. The objective evidence, in your opinion, would be that those other vehicles at the time of the initial collision were actually in movement, correct? Okay. And sir, looking at the actual documents that you reviewed, it looks like you had 10 specific things. I'm looking again on page 2 of your report.
Correct.
Media reports, crash reconstruction, mid-state system, personnel documents, manuals, and handbooks. Accurate so far?
Yes.
J.J. Keller ELD programming or electronic logging device.
Yes.
Dash cam video footage from the tractor that was driving behind the mid-state systems tractor trailer.
Correct.
Would that be Mr. Badawi's?
That's, I believe, his name, yes.
Okay. AT&T records from Mr. McDonald's phones.
Correct.
Photograph of the exemplar of the mid-state system Freightliner. Excel spreadsheet prepared by OSP titled Calculations. And CDR crash data retrieval reports from the Nissan Toyota. And finally, the Garmin GPX file from the device in the coach bus.
Correct.
Did you receive any other documents, sir, besides what you've indicated here?
There may have been other documents in there, but I haven't included them, so that there was a whole series of documents, but I didn't spend a lot of time reviewing them.
Okay, and the Excel spreadsheet prepared by the OSP titled calculations, is that in your report here, sir?
If there is I didn't include the Excel, the contents of it in here, as far as I know.
Do you currently have it with you, sir?
No, I don't have it, a printed copy of it.
Okay. Turning to page 4. Yeah, a couple things on page 4. You have on the top of the page that the Nissan Murano had been completely consumed by fire. Is that
Yes.
accurate? Okay. And
Well,
the-
if you want to suggest that the event data recorder wasn't fully consumed, that they are actually able to.
Sir, I haven't asked you a question, I just asked you,
Okay.
is that what you wrote?
It's what I wrote, yes.
Okay. And you also have the sheet metal was heavily twisted and deformed from the collision. Is that also accurate?
Yes.
I'm not misreading any of that?
No.
Okay. The left driver's side bus of the bus was damaged from the collision.
Correct.
Okay. The Toyota Highlander was damaged in the rear, passenger side, and front end.
Correct.
And you did not have the opportunity to inspect the damaged semi-trailer pulled by the 2014 Volvo tractor. That would be the Bury Lead Point vehicle.
Correct.
And I think you had indicated that the bus driver or the bus had turned sharply right within a very short period of time before that impact in your direct testimony.
I'm not sure if those were my exact words, but I indicated that it's possible to move to the right because of the offset nature of the collision.
Okay. And your analysis, under engineering analysis, is primarily rely on the physical evidence collected from the scene and the involved vehicles that is available.
Correct.
Okay. And at the bottom, the last sentence, the steering gear from Mr. McDonald's Freightliner was disassembled by ZF Active Safety and Electronics in Lafayette, Indiana. Going on to the next page, an inspection revealed the Freightliner steering was in a straight ahead position at the time of the crash.
Correct.
What would that be indicative to you, sir, of that positioning of the steering box gear?
That Mr. McDonald did not undertake any pre-impact evasive steering.
Okay, so there was no reaction that he either tried to turn the wheel one way or the other pre-impact into the Nissan Murano?
Correct. There's no evidence of any steering pre-impact.
Okay. So I think you had put that, and I want to make sure I understand this here. There's no perception response in this particular case by Mr. McDonald, the defendant, and that would be one piece of evidence that would go to that. Would you agree or disagree?
I would want to change how you worded it. There is no evidence of a response. So to say that Mr. McDonald didn't see the Nissan Murano in a brief instant before impact, it can't be said.
Well, okay, well, let me ask you about that. You know, perception and response are two different things, aren't they? I have to perceive something,
Correct.
and then I have to respond to it.
Correct.
Whether he saw it or not isn't as important as to whether or not he had a reaction or response to it, correct?
Well, I think they're part and parcel of the same thing. You can't respond to something without first seeing it.
That's my
Right.
point.
So
if he didn't see it, that would be evidence of why there's no response in the steering gear box being turned or anything.
that's correct. If he didn't see it, he isn't going to respond to it.
Okay.
But it's also possible that.
Well, I
he
didn't
sees
ask you
it.
it was possible, I just asked you that.
That's right.
Okay.
I appreciate what you're saying,
But that would be evidence of not seeing it by virtue of no response, correct?
right, that's a
Thank you.
possibility.
Now, you also have that on page 5, that the ELD data, which is our exhibit 6, the last data position was 74.7 miles per hour that was registered on that. Would that be accurate? This would be on page 5 of his report.
Well, not to be nitpicky.
Well, I'm just asking you.
Right, you asked if it was the last data point, and I'm not being nitpicky, it's the last data point with speed.
Yes, the next one is 0.
Correct.
So the next one presupposes or supposes it's not moving.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Which would be signify the event that occurred. In other words, the conclusion of the event, because there's no further reaction on this device that's
Right.
been queried, at least.
Correct.
Okay. Now, you also indicated in your report, again, I'm looking at page 5, that this would involve the Toyota, the 2006 Toyota that Mr. Wolverton was driving, that Sergeant Jasper noted that in the 4 seconds prior to being impacted, its speed decreased from 16 miles an hour to 8 miles an hour. Is that in your report, sir? That's what was noted? Or that what your opinion was?
Yes, I'm summarizing Sergeant Jasper's report,
Okay.
and that's basically its speed decreased from 16 down to 8.
And then it experienced a 32 mile an hour delta V.
Correct.
What that would mean, just so I'm following along, is that you would have to add 8 to 32. That would be the increased speed that was going to the Toyota after the collision into the Toyota by the Van Hool bus.
Right, I prefer to refer to it occurred during the collision. So it's
Okay.
being accelerated by 32 miles an hour during the collision.
Okay. And so this is a secondary transfer because the initial transfer, actually a tertiary transfer, the initial transfer would be to the Nissan and then to the bus and now to the Toyota.
Correct.
So this is a tertiary transfer of energy from the prior occurrences.
Correct.
Okay. Do you believe that that calculation by Sergeant Jasper is accurate?
What calculation has he done here? His statement is correct,
Okay.
all right, but I don't
That's
see a
fine.
calculation.
And then you have the same page, in our opinion, the speed of a vehicle 7 miles, almost 7 minutes prior to the collision should not be relied upon to opine the speed of a vehicle in the moments leading up to the collision. Fair?
Fair.
Okay. Looking at the bottom of page 6, you note that on pages 46 to 49 of Sergeant Jasper's report, he discusses the analysis of the dash camera from the McKesson tractor trailer.
Correct.
Okay. At any point in time, sir, did you look at the NTSB analysis of this camera?
No, I did not.
Okay. Is there any particular reason why you didn't?
I haven't been provided it.
Were you aware, sir, that the NTSB published for public view those reports?
I'm aware they do, but I did not go searching for them. I wasn't aware that it had been published yet.
How long have you been doing this, sir?
I'm doing it for 23 years, 24
Okay.
years.
You recognize that this kind of collision would have the NTSB involved in it, correct?
I was well aware they were involved. And my experience has been I've done numerous cases where the NTSB is involved. It has sometimes taken 2 to 3 years for the reports to get published. So
Okay.
I don't typically go looking until I hear that they're published.
So no one told you they were published?
No,
You have no idea when they were published then?
I don't know.
Would it surprise you if they were published about 3-4 months before you issued your report?
No, it wouldn't surprise me.
Okay. In terms of Mr. Badawi, this would be at the bottom of page 6. You write that in this video analysis, he was able to establish that Mr. McDonald's Freightliner was traveling faster than the McKesson tractor trailer, which was traveling at approximately 65 miles an hour. You wrote that is all I'm asking you.
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever talked to Mr. Badawi?
No, I have not.
Have you ever read his statement that he gave to the OSP?
No, I have not.
Were you aware that, and he testified here in court, that his speed is governed at 65 miles an hour?
I expected it was.
Okay. And just so we understand, governed and cruise control are two separate concepts, aren't they? You used the word when you were asked on direct examination that the speed of Mr. McDonald's Freightliner was governed at 72 miles an hour. You recall that, sir?
It's governed at 7, my understanding is, and again,
Sir, you're testifying as an
Right.
expert.
my understanding, and I'm aware of how Detroit diesel engines are programmed. You can program the governed speed limit on cruise differently than you can when it's off cruise.
On top end. So the top end could be greater than is allowed for, then you can set the cruise for. Would that be accurate?
You can do it that way, or you can do it the reverse. So
Okay.
you can have your speed on cruise higher. If you're on cruise, you can allow it to go higher than you would if you were just on the throttle.
Sir, you testified on direct examination that his speed was governed at 72 miles an hour.
On cruise,
So you believe he could go faster than 72 miles an hour by pedal?
wrong. No, I do not believe that. My understanding is, and again, because we don't have the truck to go and inspect,
Okay.
my understanding, what I've been told, is that this truck was governed at 70 when it's not on cruise, and 72 when it is on cruise.
Okay, so it can actually go faster on cruise control than it can go outside of cruise control.
Correct.
Sir, would it surprise you that everything you said there is wrong?
Well, we don't have the truck to be able to prove one way or the other.
We don't. You indicated that your client was Mr. McDonald in the trucking company
Right,
at the beginning of this.
yes.
Would it surprise you that Mr. McDonald told the OSP in a video interview that was played to this court that the truck can go up to 75 miles an hour by pedal? Would it surprise you?
I'm not surprised by that, no.
Okay, but you weren't aware of that.
No, I was not aware that he would reported that.
So the basis of the opinion you gave on cruise control and top end speed of the truck on your direct testimony is incorrect, right?
Well, I have no data, it's only what I've been told, and when I said that under direct, is what I have been told is, and that's what I've been told.
Sir, from the beginning, your client has been Mr. McDonald and the trucking company. That's a pretty important fact, correct?
Well, my client, who I refer to as my client, is the attorney that's been retained in me, all right? That's who I refer to as my client. So I speak to my client, the attorney, and that's who I get the information from.
Your initial reason for going out there, you testified here on cross-examination on November 16, 2023, well before you were requested to write this opinion in this particular case. You testified here on cross that it was Mr. McDonald and the trucking company. Do you remember your testimony to that effect, sir?
Correct. I
Thank
was
you.
retained by the attorney who represents Mr. McDonald in the trucking company.
You said that you were retained to represent those individuals in whatever action was there, and that was the reason you were out there on November 16th, 2023.
Correct.
Okay.
I just want to be very clear, and I don't recall my exact words unless we go back on the record. I'm retained by an attorney who represents those individuals.
Sir, you're an engineer.
Yes,
Exactness is important.
yes.
The type of details as to the top speed of this vehicle is important because you have ELD data that is higher than what your testimony was that the vehicle was governed. Correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And I'm looking now on page 7. You start talking about the ELD on page 7.
Correct.
That is in Mr. McDonald's, or that is available under that specific brand, J.J. Keller. Are there different kinds of J.J. Keller ELDs, sir?
I'm assuming there are multiple different variations to them.
Okay, sir. At the beginning, you had indicated that your client, that the reason you're back on November 16, 2023, was because of their request for you to do that. Did you ask anyone at Allied to look at a similar truck with similar equipment on it?
I didn't specifically request that. I
Okay.
requested that the data from the ELD be preserved.
Okay, but sir, you're offering an opinion here on what can be transmitted and how it can be transmitted from the truck. And would you agree with me that it would be important to know what kind of specific equipment is on the particular truck that was involved in this fatal collision of 6 people and injuries to more than 6 people?
The information of what was on there, the ELD version and all this model number, and is provided in the report. So I do have that information.
Did you ask the trucking company, sir?
I don't ask the trucking company for anything. I ask the attorney.
Well, when you look at the physical evidence of this, I mean, one of the things that Trevor Jasper did was he went out to the trucking company and he obtained photos of similar vehicle with their safety director.
Right.
Do you think that that would be important?
If I'm asked to opine on those things, yes, it would be.
Well, sir, it's in your report. You're offering opinions in your report, and you haven't seen the actual machine. Do you think that that would be kind of important?
Well, I have information about the machine from the report. So seeing the actual, and a similar one, I can do that online. I can do that at the vehicle, but to me it doesn't matter. I've got the information I need.
You got the information you wanted, or they wanted you to get. Sir, in terms of who the safety officer is for the trucking company, do you know who that person is?
I do not.
You've ever met the safety person for that company?
I have not met anybody from Midstate.
Okay. So whatever information that they could have provided to you wasn't important in your opinion for the purposes of generating this report.
If I need something from Midstate, I ask through the attorneys.
Okay. Now, sir, looking at page 10 of your report, and I'm looking at the paragraph under figure 5, and it basically has some, I think what you're talking about on direct examination, that the speeds range between 62.8 miles an hour to 75.2 miles an hour.
Correct.
And I think you associated some of that to potentially going downhill, especially to the second to last ELD figure of 74.7 miles an hour.
Correct.
Okay. And I think you showed a specific graph on that. And just so that we're following along in this, sir, I'm going to show you a graph that has a similar first part, the top part, which is the crash site. Is this yours, sir, this year?
No, it's not my work.
That's not your work at all?
Well, one sec, it doesn't appear to me, I think I have a blue line, that's a white line, so,
Okay.
and I don't have a red arrow.
Well, I mean, other than the color of the red arrow and the color of the line, does this appear to be what the trip path was?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And you showed us an elevation. I'm going to show you a different elevation. And this is in pink.
Yep,
Was yours in pink?
yes.
Okay, well, at least we got that right. Now, sir, looking at this graph, I guess I'm going to point you out. It's been turned around. So we have Zanesville here and the crash site there.
Correct?
Okay. And so at the 71.5 miles an hour that's being recorded on Google Earth, fair to say that was at the time period that he's going uphill.
So you're, yeah, so what you're showing me is the 71 point. I just want to make sure I'm
Right,
understanding.
I'm
this.
asking
Yeah.
you the point on the map as shown. And
Yeah, it's flipped from mine, so I'm just
Okay.
wanting to make sure that I'm looking
Right.
at it correctly.
it's just so I'm looking at the big board now, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So this is the point I'm looking at,
Yes.
and the crash site is over here.
correct.
Okay, so that speed was recorded on the ELD at the base of the hill.
Correct.
I'm going to show you right before the area. He's going 74.7 miles an hour. And the actual grade of the roadway when he's hitting that is going downhill.
Okay.
Does that appear correct to you?
The grade at that point, well,
Yeah.
I drove this last night. And
Well,
when
sir, you did your report,
right,
and you submitted your report on January of
Yes.
this year, not last night. What
Right.
I'm asking you is that, not what you investigated last night, what I'm asking you is that, does that appear accurate?
yes. I mean, if
Okay.
he's going downhill, that's
Thank
what I found.
So, that recorded speed happens from 71 to 74 in his ELD going uphill. Is that correct?
Well, the 74.7 you just told me was going downhill, correct?
Right. At a few moments later, the prior reading, he's at 71.
Correct.
So he went uphill.
But it's just a point in time we're looking at, so we don't know the
I
speed is going
recognize
up.
that. I recognize that. But one of the things that you're talking about in your report is that you took the average distance from the ramp to the collision site, and then you divided it to get a speed of 70.5 to 71 miles an hour. And you also offered opinions that the speed would fluctuate whether you're going uphill or downhill. And you were asked on direct, going uphill, wouldn't it slow down?
Correct.
The objective evidence here from the ELD says that isn't correct.
What's not, you're showing it at 71.5 or at the base of the hill?
And he's going up the hill, correct? At
Correct.
this point. And
Mhm.
at the top of the hill, he's at 74.7 miles an hour.
And he's going downhill at that point. The grade is going down. So at that point, at the point where he's going 74.7, he's going downhill.
To show you what's been marked State's Exhibit number 6. This is the ELD report. Computer. Sir. I'm going to show you what's been marked State's Exhibit number 6. And I'm going to put it up on the screen.
Okay?
Does that appear to be the ELD report for the Freightliner?
Correct. It's what's in Mr. Sergeant Jasper's report and my report.
So, what time frame are we looking at this? Looks like 8:44 in the morning, a.m.
What specific point are you asking about?
Sir, the third from the bottom, what is the speed calculation? Excuse me, the third from the top.
Is at 8:44, 70, and it's traveling 71 miles an hour.
And what is the odometer reading on that?
529,903.5 or 903.5 is just for
Okay.
simplicity.
And what is the odometer reading on 8:40, time is that? 8:46.
At 8:46, it's 906.3.
Okay. And so that is what distance between the 71.5 miles and the 74.7 miles?
2.8 miles.
So within the 2.8 miles, which encourages or encompasses him going up the hill, he has accelerated.
He could have decelerated in that 2.8 miles and then accelerated. We don't know what his speed profile is in between there. We know, we
Sir,
can speculate.
I don't want you to speculate. We've already heard that. What I'm asking you about is that you have a distance of 2.8 miles.
Yes,
And I showed you a graph where he's going up a hill,
yes.
and that speed was gained going up the hill. From this point here, maybe it'll work. I need some technical help, Trevor. Sorry, I need 2 USB outlets. at the top of the hill here,
Yes,
2.8 miles later,
yes,
and he's gained, what, 3.2 miles per hour in speed?
right, so, I mean, as you pointed out, he's going downhill at that point. So he's, in theory, beyond the top of the hill. But he's obviously a higher elevation at the second point than he is at the first point.
Okay.
But we're looking on a graph here, this little tiny graph. We're looking at 2.8 miles being expressed over a half inch of paper. And
No, you're looking at it expressed over 2.8 miles.
right, but visually, as we're looking at it, and it's going uphill, that doesn't mean he doesn't have sufficient time to slow down over 2.8 miles up
These are
and
great
speed up.
questions I haven't asked you.
Right?
What I'm asking you is that you came up and you said, here's this wonderful graph, and let's plot some numbers on the graph.
Yep,
And we're plotting numbers on the graph, and we have him going within this space of 2.8 miles between the different reads, an additional speed of 3.2 miles an hour.
correct.
Okay, here's my question. You testified, and you used the word govern, that the cruise control is governed at 72 miles an hour.
Correct. That's what I've been told.
So you have no idea.
Nobody does. We don't have the truck anymore.
Well, somebody does. Your client. Your
But, I
client
mean,
does.
Right, right.
You just chose not to ask.
Well, I did ask, and I got an answer.
Apparently a wrong answer.
This is all argumentative. He's been back and forth with this. Next question, please.
Thank you. Okay. Looking at the bottom of page 11, and now we're looking at the coach bus Garmin data. And going into page 12. So we're talking about the bus. The bus itself was moving at what speed, sir, do you believe?
I testified that we don't know the specific speed of the bus at the time of the crash. However, after the crash, it appears to, based on the Garmin data, we've been traveling somewhere around 41, 43 miles per hour. And prior to that, the vehicle in front of it's going 8 miles an hour, 8.7 miles per hour, and the vehicle behind is going 15.
Sir, in the second to last, or I guess it would be the second to last paragraph, you write that at 72 miles an hour, the Nissan would have traveled 10.5 feet, suggesting the Nissan was following the coach bus at approximately 11 feet. Sergeant Jasper indicates there was approximately 40 feet between the set of scars from the two impacts, indicating a following distance greater than 11 feet.
Correct.
Okay, so in terms of, that would be objective, that would be something that had been documented by Sergeant Jasper, and when you were out there on November 16th, 2023, that would have been something you would have been able to see.
No, I would not have named it,
And why is that?
because the road had been repaved at that point. But I can see it in Sergeant Jasper's photographs.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that the time frame that you actually were out at the scene, all the evidence in terms of the physical evidence that would otherwise be on the ground, from any kind of broken pieces to any kind of fluid leaks to any kind of tire marks on the roadway, all that would have been gone through a repaving?
Yeah, that's correct. It had been all
Okay.
been repaved.
Sir, at some point, did you estimate the distance, or were you able to estimate the distance? You said you had a total station out there.
Correct.
Were you able to estimate the distance between the bridge and the location of this impact, the initial impact of the Freightliner with the Nissan.
Can I ask which bridge you're speaking about?
Yeah. The bridge that they all went underneath in order to get to that location.
Okay, so the one leading, because there's one west of it as well.
Well, the one west to it is in front of it. I'm
Right.
talking about the one behind it.
Okay, so the one behind it. I believe I surveyed it, but I don't have that information in front of me.
Is that information in your report?
No, it's not included in my report.
Is that information important?
Depending on what you're asking it for, it could be, but I didn't anticipate being asked that question now.
Were you anticipating being asked a question on direct examination about Mr. Dowie's dash camera where he recorded events?
Just for clarification, what specific questions are you referring to?
Asking about questions, you were asked questions about the 2020 Ford Transit van 350 that had moved from in front of the Freightliner to the left lane.
Yes,
Do you remember being asked those questions?
yes,
And do you remember being asked about and watching an actual video on the, well, I'll show you. Do you remember seeing this video, sir? This is actually a PowerPoint of Mr. Dowie, and in front of him is the Freightliner.
yes,
Remember watching that and offering opinions in your direct testimony?
yes.
Okay. And my question to you is that this particular bridge that we're talking about here we're talking about here in this video, the distance between this bridge and the actual impact area with the Nissan. That's the distance that I'm asking you. Are you aware of what that distance is from the bridge?
I do not have that precise distance, no.
Okay. Would that precise distance help you in any of your analysis?
Depending on what type of analysis I might be trying to undertake, yes, it might.
If you were trying to figure out the speed of the vehicles involved and the time frame that there would be for perception and avoidance, or the ultimate issue in this case, or one of them, would that be important?
Looking at this video and trying to figure out, like, again, you're asking me somewhat of a nebulous question, and I'm used to being asked something more specific. I can't, as I'm sitting here right now, sit and think about how I'm going to use that bridge to figure out a vehicle's speed.
This is a zoomed version of the PowerPoint, sir. This shows frame 33.
Correct?
It shows, if I'm correct, Mr. Badowie's vehicle coming to the bridge. Would that be accurate?
That's correct, yes.
There appears to be a shadow a little bit past the bridge here.
Correct?
Okay. Mr. Badowie's vehicle is in the left lane at this point in time,
It is?
and it looks like this is about the first sequence moving into the next of where we can see something coming behind at number 34, some evidence of Mr. Badowie moving to the left.
Correct?
And something appears to be underneath the Freightliner at this point.
Underneath the trailer, yes.
Okay. And just so we understand, that would have been a distance that would have been measurable from I would imagine in your case, Sergeant Jasper's drawings or photographs of the initial impact with the Nissan Murano. Would that be accurate?
The distance from the bridge to the point
Yes.
of impact? Yes, it's measurable from Sergeant Jasper's work, or even it can be closely estimated from the work I did.
Okay. But you didn't do the measurement. But if you were to do the measurement at this point, you would be able to have an idea of the frames per second and the speed the truck was going, or at least an estimate of that.
Right, and you can estimate that from looking at the lane line dashes. You don't need the bridge.
That's there too. Did you do any of that stuff, sir?
Yes, I looked at that.
Which page?
I didn't include it in my report, but what I did was, when Sergeant Jasper applied the speed of 65, I wanted to look and see, do I agree with that?
Speed of what for 65?
The speed of the tractor trailer with the video.
Mr. Badawi's?
Mr. Badawi's.
Right, I'm talking about the actual speed that the Freightliner was doing in this particular case at the area of impact.
No, I'm not sure how the bridge is going to come into that, calculating that speed, the
Well,
speed of the Freightliner.
if I have a measurable distance to something, and I have an understanding of feet per second at any given speed, and I can look then back at the frame rate of the video, and I can look at the metadata in the frame rate of the video, kind of like the NTSC
Yes,
did,
Yeah,
and I could figure out that every one of these things is 1 second. So I should be able to figure out a speed from that from using those calculations, correct?
so I think you're talking about a visual expansion ratio, is what you're talking
So what
about.
I'm asking is with the parameters that I gave you, you'd be able to estimate a speed at the time of impact here, correct?
You could come up with something, if
Thank
you're
you.
looking at the expansion rate of the size of the trailer, but it's pretty small, and wouldn't be 100% confident on the accuracy of it.
I think you'll never be 100% confident. You can't be.
Correct.
But the issue here is that you didn't try.
I didn't feel that looking at trying to do the visual expansion ratio of the back end of that truck
Okay.
would give me an accurate answer.
And you knew that without even doing any of the calculations.
I can look at it and say that's too small to try and accurately do it.
So I'm now looking at page 12 of your report. And this is your analysis of the Nissan CVR data.
Yes,
And you again refer to Sergeant Jasper discussing the airbag control module and correctly opining, you have in brackets there correctly, opines that the Nissan had been traveling at approximately 15 miles an hour when it was rear-ended, and that it experienced a 57 mile per hour delta V. Is that what you wrote there, sir?
yes,
Okay. So, he correctly opined that the Nissan was moving at 15 miles an hour and it experienced a 57 mile per hour delta V. Correct?
correct.
And sir, if I was to add 15 to 57, and as a lawyer I have difficulties with math, I give you that, what number do you come up with, sir?
72.
And you say there that 72 miles an hour, in your opinion, or is the best estimate for the impact speed of the Freightliner?
Correct.
Okay. Now, we already talked about the steering mechanism being looked at as a straight position.
Right.
Fair to say that there was no driver reaction. I'm not talking about perception yet, but there was no driver reaction to whatever was in front of him at this point.
There was no steering, is what we're talking about.
Well, no, I'm talking about speed. If he's going 72 miles an hour,
Right.
you say it's the best.
That's the best estimate we have.
Okay, well, best is usually pretty good. There's not much above best, but in this particular case, 72 miles an hour is the best, 2 miles over the speed limit at this point, if that's correct. He doesn't slow down. He doesn't do anything. This is the speed that he's hitting this Nissan Murano at.
That's what we have, yes.
Okay. And in terms of the distance in the PowerPoint between frame 24 and frame 33 at 1 second apart, how long would the driver have to perceive that this was upcoming to him and react?
I'm not understanding your question. You've asked me about a period of 1 second, so the answer, the way it sounds to me, should be 1 second, if I'm talking about, but I'm not understanding your question.
Okay, well, let me rephrase it. At frame 34, we can see here. and
Correct.
We can see something coming out behind. Frame 33, yes, a little bit. Frame 32, not much going on there. Frame 31, nothing going on there. And I want to go back to frame 24 now. And into frame 25. Sir, at frame 25 here, fair to say that Mr. Mann's 2020 Transit 350 is no longer, or moving, or at least, very least at this frame, moving out of the frame of sight of the Freightliner driver, Mr. McDonald.
Correct.
So, would it be, in your opinion, that had Mr. McDonald been looking out the windshield in front of him, that he would have been able to perceive the Nissan Murano at this point?
Yes, he should have been able to.
Okay. And sir, would you be able to, utilizing a reference point such as an underpass bridge, be able to figure out where this would be in terms of distance from the impact site of the Nissan Murano?
Well, again, I'm assuming from your question, and I don't want to assume. You appeared to me to be implying that the truck is directly underneath the bridge.
I didn't imply anything, sir.
Well, so I don't know specifically, if I'm going to accurately as an engineer look at that position of that truck, I don't know where its front end is relative to the overpass, specifically. But given that if he's traveling at around 105 feet per second and impact happens around 31 and we're 6 seconds out, he's just over 600 feet away.
Okay.
All right? Probably closer to 700.
Okay. And so 700 feet away, I think you indicate would give him what? A little bit more than 6 seconds? A little bit less
Correct.
than 7 seconds? To see and perceive the Nissan Murano in front of him?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm assuming you indicated that you design trucks.
Yes,
Do you have a commercial license?
I do not.
Okay, so you're not familiar with the standards and regulations on a commercial truck?
I'm familiar with some of them. As far as the design goes, I've designed heavy truck brake systems, so I'm familiar with that, yes.
So let me ask you this. Are you familiar with the requirements in the United States to get a CDLA?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
familiar with some of them. I can't say that I'm familiar with every aspect of it.
You're not really sure about all of them?
I don't have a CDL, so I can't say that I've reviewed every single one of them.
Well, I want to go back to what you brought up earlier in your direct testimony. Perception response. In order to perceive something, I mean, you can use your other senses, I guess. You can hear, you can smell, I guess, but not really in this environment, so we can kind of cross that out, right?
Correct.
In order to see the Nissan Murano, that's 6 to 7 seconds in front of you, you'd actually have to be looking out the front windshield.
Yes, that's fair.
And because of the fact, I think you were asked the weight of this truck, the combination, and I think you have in bill of lading in this was 24,000, a little bit less than 24,400 pounds in the batteries, 53-foot trailer that's behind it. That would be important to be watching in front and out the window.
I agree with you.
Okay. And in terms of reaction time, I recognize that some people can throw a baseball very fast. Some people have extremely fast reaction times. It's not unreasonable for someone to have a reaction time that is less than 6.5 to 7 seconds.
I would certainly hope so.
Especially if they're driving a 46,000-pound, fully loaded Freightliner bus.
Freightliner tractor trailer, yes.
Correct, I'm sorry, I apologize. And just so we understand, this entire time he's able to keep, and I can go back and I do frame by frame if you want, he's able to keep this Freightliner within the fog line to the right and the zipper line in the middle the whole time.
Correct.
Prior to impact.
Correct.
Okay. And so, as far as you understand, this actual Freightliner does not have any adaptive cruise control on it?
My understanding, no, it does not.
Do you know?
Well, I reviewed the data, the spec sheet from it, and I can't recall as I sit here whether it did or not. And my expectation, my recollection is it did not.
But you're not sure?
I don't want to state something that's incorrect.
Okay. Well, let's assume, for the purpose of these questions, that it doesn't have adaptive cruise control on it.
Correct.
What kind of capabilities as a truck driver would I need to have in order to keep my vehicle between the fog line and the center zip line?
I mean, you have to steer down the road.
Yeah.
I'm not understanding your question.
You have to control the truck in
Correct.
some fashion.
Right.
And if you're not controlling the truck, if your hands aren't on the wheel or something like that, then the thing's going to go all over the place.
Yes.
Okay. And that's not happening here.
No.
Okay. And there was some testimony the other day, or some statements, that the bus height of the Van Hool was about 11 feet 6 inches. Does that sound about right to you?
It's very close to the measurements we got, yes.
Okay. And just following along, that's a pretty big item that should be noticeable by someone who is actually looking out the windshield.
Yes.
Especially when you have 6.5 to 7 seconds.
Yes.
Would it be equally accurate to say that the driver's lack of reaction to either the Nissan or the Van Hool bus at 11 feet 6 inches height shows that he's not perceiving any part of the road in front of him, other than keeping it within the lane?
Right, so he has to be doing something to keep it within the lane. But he's obviously missing that bus in front of him.
It's working so well today. Well, sir, I want to show you what was shown to one of our experts the other day. As a short clip. What do you see this individual doing, sir?
He's on his phone,
What's he doing between being on his phone
glancing up.
and glancing down?
Yes.
Back at the phone?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the concept of distracted driving, sir?
Absolutely.
And sir, what's your understanding of what distracted driving is?
Some things, something that's taking the attention of the driver away from the driving task.
So for 6.5 to 7 seconds, not looking out the front windshield of a 2019 Freightliner with about 46,000 pounds of weight on it, that would be, in your opinion, distracted driving.
There has to be something distracting him.
Would in this particular case,
In this
cell phone
case, the
equal
phone
that?
was definitely that.
Okay. Another situation, he's able to keep it in the lanes, but all of a sudden traffic changes and the impact happens.
Yep,
Is that distracted driving, sir?
yes.
You're familiar with algebra?
Yes.
Okay. And sir, my understanding from the limited math experience that I've had, that the point of algebra is to find out what x equals.
And jokingly, that's often said, yes.
Okay. In this particular case, from what we're looking here with the distracted driving, would x equal a cell phone? As one of the possible answers.
It could be. It could be various things.
Well, give me something else.
It could be one of the functions in the truck, looking at something in one of your controls. It could be, you could be distracted by looking at the vehicle beside you. You could be distracted by, something in your coffee cup. You could be distracted. Those are distractions, and there's other things that can happen inside the cab that aren't distracted driving. I've seen many videos of truck drivers having medical issues, blanking out. That's not distracted driving, but it results in the same thing.
Well, let me ask you this question. We already had a doctor testify as to medical stuff. Let me ask you this question. Would you agree with me that traveling about 700 feet without looking out the windshield is distracted driving?
I would say if medically,
Outside of medical.
it could be, and I'm sitting here thinking of what other issues that wouldn't be distractions, but that would fit the definition, and it's a pretty broad definition.
Okay. It is a pretty serious thing.
Yes, it's obvious.
Why is it a pretty serious thing, sir?
Well, we're here today for a very serious thing, right? For 6 people losing their lives.
Yeah. A lot of other people being seriously hurt. Distance is 700 feet. You think that that's reckless, not looking outside and through the windshield? Traveling at those speeds? You said the best speed's 72.
The best estimate is what I said we had, right?
Right. So at that speed, 72 miles an hour, big white billboard in front of you, manhole bus, 11 feet 6 inches off the roadway. In front of that, a Nissan Murano, all of which are moving,
Yes?
not reacting to any of those things. Is that reckless?
Well, you're asking me to.
Sir, I'm asking you a hypothetical question.
You're asking me for a legal opinion.
I'm not asking you for a legal opinion.
I sense it is because reckless is illegal.
Okay.
So here's what I do now. When I'm looking at offering opinion, the determination of reckless is up to the trier of the fact, not an expert.
100% agree, sir. Here's what my problem is. On your direct testimony, you were asked whether or not it was only negligent, not reckless. You had no difficulty answering that question.
I said in my answer, I was discussing the speeds. The speeds leading up to, for the 30 minutes prior, is what I was discussing. And I pointed out that obviously without stopping, take away the fact that the impact, and that's what my answer was.
So you were able to answer, it was not reckless on direct, but on cross, you can't answer a question.
Because
Because the
the
legal
question,
issue.
the question is the way it's asked, the question
Okay.
asked.
Well, then let me ask it a different way. Are you familiar with the legal standard in Ohio for recklessness?
No, I'm not.
Are you familiar with the legal definition of negligence in Ohio?
No, I'm not.
Would it be a fair statement then that any opinion that you would be able to offer in either one of those standards wouldn't be a valid opinion because you're not even familiar with the standard? Correct?
As far as, from a perspective of whether it's reckless, yes. I mean, his conduct, I can look at data and I can say, is this data consistent with recklessness? I can offer an opinion that. But it's not a legal definition of what
Well, what
reckless is.
definitions
Evidence
are...
Rule 704, he can't render an opinion on the ultimate issue. It's pretty basic.
Thank you. He offered opinions of the role of the white van. That would be Mr. Mann's vehicle that we saw in the video.
Yes, I discussed that veering to the left into the median.
Okay. And you indicated in terms of that particular vehicle there, that vehicle took some reaction to the Toyota.
That's what his testimony is, my understanding, is that his testimony, my understanding, is that he veered to the left to avoid the Toyota in front of him.
Well, the semi was all the way back at the bridge.
No, we're talking about the veering to the left into the median. Not the lane change to the left. He's in the left lane, he
Right,
veers
that's
left.
what I'm asking about. I'm asking about the lane change.
Okay, so the lane, that's not the veer. The lane change to the left.
Well, at the end, you're talking about where the Toyota's been hitting and spitting out.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what we were discussing in my direct.
Okay. And that is the result of the defendant hitting the Nissan Murano and then the combination hitting the Van Hole bus.
And then the Van Hole bus hitting the Toyota and the Toyota spinning in front of it.
Right. And that's what your testimony relates to as to the time period Mr. Mann had to react to that.
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked State's Exhibit number 22. Have you ever seen this picture, sir?
I believe I have.
Okay, what do we see in this picture?
We see the coach bus. We see pillar of fire. And we see the Mr. McDonald's tractor trailer behind it.
Okay? At this point in time, we generally can agree that the bus doesn't appear to have the extent of fire and other damage that would have been observable at the conclusion of this event.
Correct.
Okay. And sir, are you familiar with this particular part? What are we seeing here?
We're seeing the right steer tire of Mr. McDonald's tractor elevated off the roadway.
And sir, where is it elevated into?
Well, I think the front, what you're trying to point out is that the front end of his truck
Is where?
is in the rear of the coach bus.
Okay. In an elevated position.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not on, you know, the road level, it's heightened.
Correct.
What's doing this, sir?
Well, it's been ramped up by the Nissan Murano is underneath the Freightliner,
Okay.
or partially underneath, not fully underneath, but partially underneath the Freightliner.
And that's a result of two separate events. I think you had indicated one event created one delta V, the other created a negative delta V.
Correct.
Okay. One of the things that most likely caused the negative delta V would be the Nissan going into the pavement.
Again, it's a possibility, and because we can't understand, when I look at the time sequence, why it's experiencing a negative delta V as early as it did. So its interaction with the pavement is a possible explanation.
Sir, I'm going to show you what's been marked, State's Exhibit 26C. You ever seen this picture before?
I may have.
What are we seeing in this picture, sir?
We're seeing some debris in this right lane of the interstate, and it's fairly early on in the collision.
Do we see a color change on the surface of the roadway here, sir?
Yes, we do.
And what color change do we see?
So we see fluid stains making it dark, and we see what I'm going to refer to as a material transfer, making it white. So it's could be aluminum transfer or some metallic transfer onto the surface.
Silver?
Sure.
Okay. What color was the Nissan Murano, sir?
I don't recall it as I sit here. But it could have been.
It was
I'm assuming
silver?
so it could have been silver. I don't recall. But the
Yeah.
underside, like the aluminum transmission housing or the engine housing, could leave a mark like that, even if the vehicle wasn't.
Showing you
Silver
what's been
color.
marked State's Exhibit 26B. What do we see here, sir?
A whole series of pavement scars, fluid stains, and metallic transfer.
And sir, would this be indicative of the area where the Nissan had been collided into by the Freightliner vehicle?
No, this is where the Nissan Murano, well, yes and no. The initial impact, I believe, is one slide or two slides back there. So that's where your initial impact is with the Freightliner. And then the Freightliner is pushed forward into the back end of the the Nissan Murano is pushed into the back of the bus.
And sir, zooming this up a little bit, what are we seeing on the roadway here?
Debris, fluid transfer, fluid stains, pavement scars, metallic transfers.
So this would have been the area where the Nissan was driven forward and driven down into the pavement by the Freightliner.
Correct.
What are we seeing in State's Exhibit 26G?
Looks like a piece of air dam from a bumper.
What else are we seeing on the roadway?
Pavement scars, fluid stains, metallic transfers.
I'm going to show you what's been marked State's Exhibit 24C. What are we seeing here, sir?
We're seeing the front end of the Freightliner and the back end of the coach bus.
Okay?
You were asked a question on direct about a metal
Roof being sheared off of the Nissan?
I don't recall being asked a specific question about it, but I remember it being mentioned.
In your direct
Yes,
examination?
it was mentioned, but I don't know if I was asked a specific question about it.
So in this particular photograph, do you see that?
Parts of the roof?
Yes.
Yeah,
Where do you see that?
I believe I see that on top of the Freightliner.
And sir, if you could use your screen in front of you to point to where that would be?
You want me to touch the screen?
Yes,
Touch
please.
screen, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Let's take a lunch break. Be back at 1 o'clock.
All rise.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll find out. If not, just curious.
The very first and last thing.